They can rely on in big situations.
And Gerhard Mathangani
has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
For WKXX Live, these guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome in to WKXX Live. Chase Robinson, Gerhard Mathangani here with you. As apologize for the delay. We're on though. We're with you for the next hour. We've been battling some technical difficulties today, but we are very excited and glad to have those fixed and to be back on with you, able to spend some time with you on this Monday. A lot to react to today. And you can give us a call at 256-413-1029. That is 256-413-1029. What a wild weekend in college football.
Yeah.
We talked last week. We talked Saturday morning on the College Kickoff Show, the potential for chaos. And, we almost had a lot of chaos. TCU went down the field and kicked a last-second field goal. That was crazy.
Yep.
Michigan just barely won their game. South Carolina scored 63 points on the number 5 team in the country, Tennessee. Arkansas beat Ole Miss, the number 14 team in the country. Just a crazy weekend, and Jacksonville State won the ASUN.
That's exactly right. At the stadium of the team that they were, at the time, co-champions with. And so if you haven't seen the stuff on social media, it's great watching JSU because they have to celebrate their own way because the conference obviously would not give them a championship. But, yeah, this weekend was insane. Going into the weekend, we didn't know with the matchups how good of a slate it would be, but it ended up being phenomenal. And I think that TCU game kind of highlighted everything. And one of the things I was really wanting to happen, I'll just be very frank about the way I watch college football right now. I just root for chaos, especially towards the end of the year. And we almost got it with two teams that are currently, if the season ended today, two teams that would be in the playoff barely getting by on in games that they were the favorite to win. And so with Michigan and TCU, barely escaping, we had just a weird but great time. And then even the Pac-12 games were good as well with Oregon coming back and getting that win, as well as USC getting the win over UCLA too. Yeah. So really across the country and every time zone, we had some great action.
If you had to pick a favorite moment of the weekend, what would it have been?
I mean, as much as I root for chaos, there was just something great about that lining up for that field goal that TCU had.
Yeah,
I thought that was just an incredible sequence of events there. As much as I wanted TCU to lose that game, just because, like I said, I want chaos to happen. That was fantastic. And then I really liked also the USC UCLA game. However, I thought the TCU Baylor game was a little bit more interesting.
My favorite game of the day was in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, South Carolina, I told you this earlier, they could have beaten anybody in the country on Saturday night. The 100%. Way that crowd was. I was listening to an interview with Shane Beamer on Friday. You could just hear it. They were pumped up and ready for this game, and they came out ready to play against 63 points on the Tennessee Volunteers. And, yeah, unfortunate news on Hendon Hooker, ACL tear, and he's out. I don't really think that mattered, though, Saturday night. The Gamecocks were going to win that game.
Oh, no doubt. And he actually played a pretty solid game up until that point. Yeah. 3 touchdowns on the day. He had, I think, an 83 QBR. So, I mean, he was having a solid day, but it honestly didn't matter. South Carolina probably could have beat the Philadelphia Eagles that day. Like, they were just on it. And but to me, that was the game. Was like, when we heard Spencer Rattler coming to South Carolina, this is the Spencer Rattler I think everybody thought that they would get. And it hasn't been that way consistently, but consistency has been the name of the game for South Carolina all season. Like we just wanted, something of merit consistently. We just hadn't gotten it, but they came to play Saturday, and they made a whole lot of SEC fans happy with knocking off Tennessee and officially booting them out of the playoff situation.
Yeah. Arkansas beats Ole Miss 42-27. You think Lane Kiffin's mind was elsewhere Saturday night?
I think three things are true based on their team's performances. I think Ohio State was looking ahead to Michigan. I thought Michigan was looking ahead to Ohio State. That's the reason why both teams didn't play that great. I know Ohio State ended up scoring a lot towards the end. And the third thing, I think that there was some distraction in the camp from Ole Miss. Now, I'm not saying that they, obviously they're going Arkansas and Ole Miss was a situation where Lane Kiffin is going to Auburn for sure, but their heads were elsewhere, and it just shows that you just can't take anything for granted. Number one in the SEC in general, but at the same time too. I think we did get a distracted football team in the same sense that we got with the two Big Ten the two Big Ten teams that I named.
Lane Kiffin was asked following the game about the Auburn job, and pretty generic answer. He did say in the question he was asked about being the number one target at Auburn, and he said, well, based on that losing Arkansas, he shouldn't be the number one target. I thought that was a good answer, but a lot of eyes are going to be on that over the next 5 days or so.
Yeah.
Of course, the Egg Bowl being Thursday night opened up a day early.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see over the next few days.
Not to mention also another thing that I think that adds a little bit of drama to this story is the fact that, and obviously Ole Miss hasn't said anything officially, but the reports are that there's a contract extension out there. There's a piece of paper out there saying, hey, Lane, do you want to stay our head coach? You put your name on this piece of paper, you're going to be our head coach in the future. The fact that that document is reportedly out there, it just adds even more intrigue to it. Now, he'll get maybe some unfair questions about, why haven't you signed it? The contract extension, all that. He will handle the media just fine. But the fact that it's out there, to me, adds a little bit of element to the drama that already is there, and maybe some smoke that leads to the fire that says that he's headed to the Plains.
Usually when you're offered a contract extension and you want to stay in that place, you make that happen.
Right.
And what did that come out Thursday?
Yes. Yeah. Thursday, either Wednesday or Thursday of last week.
Yeah. And so he had a couple of days before the game to think about it. And obviously he was still thinking during the game because he wasn't thinking about Arkansas. The Iron Bowl is this week, Saturday, 2:30, CBS. I think this game has a little more intrigue to it than it did maybe 5 weeks ago.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I think that there's, obviously Auburn and Alabama fans are so used to this game being monumental. It usually has the cachet of what this year's Ohio State-Michigan game does, where the winner, obviously has a chance to play the playoff, has a chance in the past the BCS and all that. But I'm right there with you. I do think that this year's Iron Bowl does have some intrigue and does have some drama, especially if on Black Friday, if we get some news on Lane Kiffin, I think that the game will have even more intrigue and more interest this year than some of the other years. So Alabama usually, I think Alabama's like a 20-something point favorite in the game. I was really surprised at the Vegas line, and I think that. I'm not telling you to, make this pick, but I do think Auburn's not 4 touchdowns worse than Alabama.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So that is coming up this week. A lot to prepare for on this Thanksgiving week. We'll have no show on Thursday, of course. We will be back with you on Friday to get you ready for rivalry weekend. That has always been a mouthful for me. Got it out there. But I figure we could call that something else because rivalry weekend is a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And the one that used to always get me is the Red River. I used to always say shootout, and I just continue to say shootout because number one, it makes sense, and it makes sense for that area of the country as well. But Red River rivalry always there's too many R's and W sounds and whatnot that's right there in that same thing. But yeah, I'm right there with you. The rivalry weekend. It does. We need to have a different moniker for that for that weekend of football.
It is the last weekend of the regular season. Yeah, we can say that. But a lot of great games coming up this week. We'll be previewing. We'll look back to this past weekend for the Jacksonville State Gamecocks coming up next. It was a big weekend in Conway, Arkansas. We'll talk about it coming up next.
Martin's Finley Close.
WKXX Live as we get this Thanksgiving week rolling. Jason Gerhard here with you on a shortened show today. Some technical difficulties. We went on at 3. We're with you till 4. Then we'll turn it over to the press box. We got a lot of college football to talk about this afternoon. I got my Jacksonville State pullover on today, celebrating the 2022 ASUN champs. Not recognized by the conference.
Right.
But we're recognizing them.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a nice trophy on hand with them on Saturday as well. They were ready to celebrate that ASUN championship. Picked 4th preseason and just clean house in the ASUN this year.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot, and even people at JSU have talked about it a lot. JSU their players were able to win the weekly awards. They were picked in the preseason poll. Participated in preseason conference media days. Everything that they were able to do to win a conference championship and be recognized, they did it. And then after knocking off, I think it was Sam Houston State, very beginning of the season, they're like, JSU won't be able to be a conference champion. I think it was a lot more satisfying because of all of those things that were stacked on top of JSU going into this year. And the conference basically just pulling the rug out from under them and not just beating Central Arkansas. I mean, thoroughly dominating them. And I think if you're a Jacksonville State fan, there was a lot of bones and a lot of things being made of JSU's jump from Division I or Division II to FBS or FCS, and people didn't really like that and whatnot. I think no matter where you stand on JSU's move to the FBS, that's the way you wanted to leave that conference. That's the way you wanted to leave that level of football. Complete domination of the next best team from a record standpoint in that division. That's the way you wanted to leave it. So combine that with the win against Florida State last year. You have your win over Ole Miss. You have your great game against Auburn, and then the conference championship to leave the FCS. That to me is exactly what you wanted.
Oh yeah, and you're right about that. Great win on the road, and 40-17 was the final there in Conway, Arkansas. And last year when Rich Rod was hired, I thought that he could really turn this program around. I didn't know how quick though, especially with really a complete roster overhaul.
Right.
But the guys he brought in and the guys that stayed really bought in. And I was just so impressed with the football team this year. Just looking back over the games I saw in person, the games I watched on TV, you can tell that he's been around the biggest and the best in the way he's coached these guys up.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think that everybody that heard Rich Rod was coming to Jacksonville State, number one, you were excited because you're now talking to a man that has been, as you said, at the highest level of the college game. And then secondly, you had a pretty solid team coming back, a team that had some talent. Coach Gross did a fantastic job recruiting. They did a good job in the portal. So you knew that, number one, you had the coach that's been there, and two, you had the talent. Now, could they transfer it to the field? Coach has said a million times, everybody's a freshman in this scheme. Yeah. Offensive guys and defensive guys, but most specifically offense, where Coach Rich Rodriguez has basically carved out his own niche and basically has led, been one of the forethought guys as far as scheme goes in football. But the fact that they were able to teach their scheme and have the players execute it to a really high level, that to me shows you his genius and where he's probably, I know he probably can't win the coach of the year, but he's to me the national coach of the year. Yeah. Being able to come to JSU immediately and have that kind of impact. It was fantastic. It was fantastic to watch. And I think you said it last week. We didn't know what we would get with JSU from an offensive standpoint. You went to a couple practices, you saw, you're like, I don't know what to get because you just see JSU versus JSU. And then I think after that same Houston State game, we kind of thought, oh, you know what? This team has something there. And now we see the result of that something there, and it's fantastic.
It is. And even that first game against Stephen F. Austin on ESPN, I'm watching it.
That's what it was.
And no penalties. These guys doing this up-tempo offense, no penalty. Like, it was just, you could tell then that this staff is for real. These players are for real for buying in. And, obviously a couple losses in the mix there at Tulsa and then at home against Southeast Louisiana. Gets two really good football teams, but it's just been a fun team to watch. Only 11 seniors, so I think what Jacksonville State is taking with them up to the FBS and into Conference USA. I think they're a team you should watch out for.
Yeah, I mean, apologies. I kept saying Sam Houston State instead of Stephen F. Austin, but that game really showed you a lot.
Yeah,
got down early, long break. They were able to get things right, and then second half they exploded. That to me is kind of what the makeup of this team was, and they weren't perfect. Obviously, they had suffered a big loss against Tulsa. Southeastern Louisiana really took it to JSU, especially in the second half. So there's some things to correct, but at the same time, they were able to, every problem, every situation where something occurred where it was a problem for JSU, they felt like they easily corrected it, and very quickly, whether it was in game or the next week. And yeah, that's exactly the kind of trajectory. That's the momentum you want as you go to the FBS. Now, once you go to the FBS, I mean, we're watching right now what Liberty's doing. We're watching right now in real time what James Madison's doing. Now, they obviously, the last few weeks has been a struggle for both, but it's not out of the realm of discussion to say that this team can't make a splash in the FBS relatively quickly. And so this move wasn't done out of haste. This move wasn't done out of panic. The move to from the FCS to the FBS, it was done thoughtfully. And now I think the team is ready. It's not a situation where you're just throwing your team out to the wolves to collect a nice paycheck. No, this team is ready to compete and compete at a high level, at the highest level of football.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun to watch what the Gamecocks can do next year. But that's the end of the season, obviously, with no playoffs. Saturday was the final game. If you want to see that ASUN championship trophy, it's going to be with Rich Rod tonight at Buffalo Wild Wings in Oxford at the Rich Rod radio show with Mike Paris and Coach Rod. It's 6 o'clock tonight. There again at Buffalo Wild Wings in Oxford. They said the trophy's going to be there with him. Celebrating.
Yep. And Greg Sykes told us on the air. Well, we had him a couple of times on the show, and he said it. We will celebrate this like a real championship. So now, no, that trophy did not come from the ASUN office, but they made their own, and I love the fact that they made their own. And so, yeah, if you want to, take a look at the last championship trophy from a conference championship perspective, it'll be right there at B-Dub. So go and enjoy some wings and go listen to Rich Rod and go take a picture of the trophy.
There you go. Going back to the game on Saturday, Zion Webb, career high of 132 yards rushing and a touchdown. Ryan Wiggins had a couple of touchdowns on the day as well. What they've been able to do on the ground with so many different guys has been really impressive. They got great receivers too, but they have really capitalized on the run game.
Yeah, that's obviously the strong suit for Coach Rich Rodriguez is the running game and how versatile they are running the football. And it's great when your quarterback can help you in that. But the fact that they've been able to use four different guys and be able to be productive with all four guys, Ron Wiggins last couple of weeks has been sensational. And you add to that, obviously, Anwar Lewis, Speedy LaRoche, and Pat Jackson. They've all been able to not only help, but be very productive with that scheme. And they all look the same as far as just height, weight, their stature. And they all wear numbers outside of Pat Jackson. They all wear numbers in the 20-something, so they kind of look like the same player getting the football. But yeah, they've been fantastic, and they haven't had to put the ball in the air a lot. I think 17 throws, 8 of 17 Zion Webb was. So I think next year they add a passing element to their team. We've talked to Sean Brown, we talked to Sterling Galvin. Like they have some good receivers, good pass catchers. I think that part of the game is coming, but as of right now, the offensive line and the running game has been fantastic, and Ron Wiggins has had a great last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it really has. So great day on Saturday for the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, and is the FCS playoff set now?
I believe so. I'll check the bracket, but yes, I believe that the FCS bracket has been out and released, and we'll see. Obviously, Stanford is a team we talk about a lot on the College Football Kickoff show. Yes, the bracket has been released, and your 1 seed is South Dakota State. Your number 2 seed is look at the bottom side of the bracket, Sacramento State. Yeah. And I'm not gonna go through every seed, but congratulations to the Sanford Bulldogs. We talked about this last week. If they were able to beat Mercer, they would have a chance at a first round bye, and they got it.
Yeah, they're a number 6 seed, so they will await a team that you and I have seen. We call it Jacksonville State, Southeastern Louisiana. The winner of Southeastern Louisiana and Idaho will play Samford. So, could be a tough team waiting them. But, hey, great job for Coach Chris Hatcher and the Samford Bulldogs getting that first round bye in the FCS playoffs. They're gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think Samford is one of those teams where they've always been really, really solid, but this year they've taken it to another level, and that's where I think Coach Chris Hatcher and his staff deserve a tremendous amount of respect. And so for JSU fans that watch this team now going from the FCS to the FBS, I think that now that, hey, we got a team now in the state of Alabama that's competing for a championship. And I think a lot of people will start supporting Samford, especially a lot of JSU fans who have been here before. They've been here in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They know how difficult it is to win those games. We talked to Mike Paris last week. He said one of the biggest things that he remembers when they were in the FCS was those home games in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Great atmospheres, great environments. And I really hope for Samford's case, they get the exact same love.
Yes, absolutely. And so the FCS playoffs begin coming up this Saturday. They'll crank those up. But congratulations to the Jacksonville State Gamecocks on a great finish to the year and being the ASUN champs. We'll take a break here. We'll talk some Alabama football next.
The Press
WKXX live on this Monday afternoon, 256-413-1029 will get you in to be a part of the show. Again, that is 256-413-1029. Chase and Gerhard here with you. Alabama gets a 34-0 win over Austin Peay on Saturday there at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Had the early 11 o'clock kickoff game. It was actually on SEC Network Plus. Took me a second to hunt it down, but I found it. And Alabama walks away with the win. A couple of chances for Austin Peay early in that game to get some points on the board. They went for it on fourth down. One time, didn't get it, missed a field goal. So that game could have been different if Austin Peay was able to make some plays.
Yeah, and we knew that Austin Peay would come to play in this game, and we had a chance to see. We've seen Austin Peay for a few years battle out of the OVC, and once again, these games are their Super Bowl. So we know they'll come out with fire, determination, passion, a great script to start the game. You know, every team has one, but theirs was going to be the best of what they do. Bama weathered the storm, and they were able to battle out against a really solid Governor's football team. I mean, this was no slouch team. I mean, they came in with 7 wins on the season, and you know, Bama kind of weathered that storm at the beginning, and then really took advantage of some of their mistakes towards the end, and walked away with the win. But the biggest number, I think, that for the defense, they really needed the 0. We saw the game earlier. I believe it was Mississippi State scored the very last second. There is something about a shutout that makes you feel a lot better, and they were able to get the shutout this week.
Yeah, they were. And Austin Peay's coach was worrying me a little bit. He came out firing. I said, "There's no way he can keep this up the whole game." He was very into it, but he had those players fired up and ready to go. And again, they were able to make some plays, and Austin Peay actually ended up winning the ASUN, the three-way tie. Austin Peay won the ASUN conference, or will represent the ASUN in the playoffs. But you know, Nick Saban kind of spoke on this morning what this team can take away from a game like that.
Yeah, obviously, you know, you want to take away both some positives and some things that you can work on and correct as you go into the final regular season game of the year. And Coach Saban talked about it, some of the things that they did well in the game, and then also looking in the mirror and saying, hey, we need to also fix some other things as we head into the Iron Bowl.
I think we did a lot of good things in the last game. I think one of the things that probably we need to get corrected is, you know, we did get 3 turnovers defensively, but we also had 3 turnovers. So, you know, ball security is, you know, a very important part of being successful. Gives the other team 3 extra possessions where you could have scored. So, and I think the emphasis has to continue to be on, you know, whenever you're less than perfect in terms of your execution, whether it's fundamental execution, or whatever it is, that's when you get exposed. So that's why we got to keep coaching our team to get it right on a consistent basis.
Nick Saban there on his takeaways from that win over Austin Peay. Ball security has been an issue throughout the year, and again, we saw that on Saturday. And you know, that's one thing. When you're playing a team that can take advantage of those mistakes, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, most certainly. And this is something. It feels like the sermon has been spoken again and again and again about ball security, and it didn't bite him in this game, but it's one of those situations to where it could have. And so obviously, you know, you want your team to play great football. And so the last 2 games, this game, this Iron Bowl game, and the potential bowl game coming up is to me, it's going to be telling to see how far this team has learned those lessons after giving the ball away 3 different times.
Yeah, and so this week, the Crimson Tide turned their attention to the Auburn Tigers. It is Iron Bowl week here in the state of Alabama. And Nick Saban spoke on the big game Saturday.
Hey, yeah, I mean, Iron Bowl kind of goes without question, kind of goes without saying. This game normally, I said earlier, this game normally means a lot more in the kind of bigger scheme of college football. This game really doesn't. But Coach Saban still highlighted the fact that this is one of the greatest rivalries in the sport, and another big game for his team to prepare for.
This is one of the greatest, you know, rivalry games in college football, and you know, most every team in rivalry games, sort of it's a part of their legacy in terms of how did they do in the rivalry game. And this is one of the biggest ones, and it means a lot to a lot of people in our state. It means a lot to, us, our players, and our fans, and we're going to do the best job we can to, get ready for, this game. I think Cadillac Williams has done a really, really good job. They've played really well these last 3 games. They run the ball effectively. They got a lot of diversity on offense. The quarterback's a very athletic player who can run and throw. Tank is one of the better backs in the SEC. Their defense is very, very aggressive. Papone is a really good inside backer. Hall's a really good rusher. Creates a lot of negative plays. They're very good on special teams. So this is a very challenging, game for us, and our players are going to have to do a great job of getting prepared to play as well as we played all season.
Iron Bowl coming up Saturday, 2:30. CBS will have the broadcast as they typically like to pick up the Iron Bowl for that 2:30 time slot. And it is in Bryant-Denny Stadium, Tuscaloosa this year. And last year it was Alabama heavily favored in that game, and we had to go to 4 overtimes. And I had no idea. I was at the game last year, and I don't know if I had watched a multi-overtime game last year.
Yeah.
And so they come trotting out and start doing 2-point conversions.
Yeah.
I knew the rule, but it really caught me off guard that they came out there and started doing these 2-point conversions.
Yeah, even as a fan, I was like, you remember the rule in the back of your mind that college football changed it.
Yeah.
But when they announced it, football's not in your brain, so you don't really play it out in real life about the way that it's going to look after the second or third overtime. You're running 2-point conversion plays. I remember that epic Texas A&M LSU game that went to 7 overtimes under the old rules, and that's one of the things that college football wanted to avoid. But yeah, last year was just insane, and obviously start running 2-point plays to get the game over with, and ended up going 4 overtimes, and ended up being one of those kind of thriller situations for just regular casual college football fans.
Yeah.
And of course for Alabama really needing to win that game in order to secure the ticket to Atlanta, and they ended up making the college football playoff and all of that. So it was just a great atmosphere last year. This year in Tuscaloosa, I don't know if it has the same juice because Bama's been solid at home. Auburn has been okay on the road, and but just the game cachet in and of itself lets you think that it's going to be a good game, even though I don't know if the results on the field will play out that way.
It's been a while since we've had an Iron Bowl where one of the two teams aren't playing for something big.
Yeah.
Whether an SEC championship, whether a spot in the playoffs, or back in the BCS days, a spot in the national championship. It's been a while since neither team has been in that situation.
We've been spoiled. We've been very, very spoiled as football fans in the state of Alabama, because this game usually has so many implications, national implications on the game as it relates to the future of one or the other team or both teams. But this year, obviously, just doesn't have that same cachet, doesn't have that same feel. We kind of now know how the other side lives. We know how Florida State was like this for a very long time, where it feel like every one of those games really meant a lot, and both teams have been kind of on a downslide, and so that game has just kind of been thrown into the rest of the college football slate. This year's Iron Bowl, I don't expect it to be every year, but this year's Iron Bowl is kind of flown into that. It's another game. It's a big game to us, but it doesn't have that same echoing, thundering atmosphere that it does across the country.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So Saturday, 2:30 Iron Bowl. We'll be previewing it all week long, getting you set there for the big game Saturday afternoon. We'll talk Auburn football coming up next. We'll look back at the win over Western Kentucky and look at things from the Auburn side coming up next.
Martinsville.
be a part of the show. Give us a call now, 256-413-1029. Give us your thoughts on the weekend. I'm going to talk some Auburn Tigers as what was a tie game at halftime broke loose in the second half. The running game got going for the Auburn Tigers, and they win over Western Kentucky 41-17.
Yeah, big win for Auburn. I think, obviously we talked to Ryan Brown last week and a few others that kept saying a lot of the same things, that, hey, this Western Kentucky team is really, really good. Austin Reed's a very good quarterback. And, this is not, your run-of-the-mill group of 5 team. This is a very, very solid football team. And Auburn came out. We knew the game plan. We've known the game plan ever since Brian Harsin was fired, that, hey, we got to run the football. And Auburn did that. Auburn tried, obviously, to run it early, and then had some gimmick plays. Jarquez Hunter with the pass. He's 1 for 1 for his career with a touchdown. And but for the most part, we knew, hey, Auburn's going to have to run the football. And they did. Tank Bigsby had a great game. Jarquez Hunter had a great game. Both guys went over 100 yards for the day. They didn't need to throw the ball a ton. Their stat line kind of reminds me a lot of what Auburn does, what Jacksonville State does, throwing the football. They don't have to really throw it a whole lot. They don't ask Robbie Asher to do very much throwing the football, but ran the ball very, very effectively, and they were able to come away with the win. Yeah,
impressive win, because we talked about Western Kentucky really in depth last week and what they brought to the game. Of course, Tyson Helton, their head coach, comes from a deep coaching family, but Auburn was the better team, and they showed it. And I think that's something Auburn has been the better team in some games. They have not showed it. They did. They were energized, and they showed it on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, most certainly. I think that's what you wanted to see with the Tigers. Do you get the hangover after knocking off Texas A&M last week and then think you're back and then you can just roll over this team? Or do you carry that same energy and passion from a week ago into this week? And as you mentioned at the very beginning, give a lot of credit to Western Kentucky. They played really well, played Auburn to a tie. And then in the second half, you saw the talent take over for Auburn. And yes, can you make the statement that Auburn is very limited? Yeah, Auburn's limited. But what they're limited to, they have good personnel doing it. Jarquez Hunter and Tank Bigsby, 2 of the best, definitely in the country, or definitely in the SEC, but also probably the country. So it was good to see, Auburn kind of riding the momentum of last week, taking this Western Kentucky team very seriously, and then performing well on senior day.
Yeah, and so Auburn now kind of gearing up for the Iron Bowl as they got their win over Western Kentucky. Excuse me. Now it's time to look ahead to another tough one. And in Alabama, we mentioned this. We were talking about Alabama. It's in Tuscaloosa. The way these two teams match up is yes, Auburn can run the ball really well, but Alabama does a really good job in stopping the run. Teams that beat Alabama throwing the football, Auburn has not thrown the football well this year.
Yeah, it's kind of a clash of two different styles where what Auburn needs to do to win and what Auburn has been doing to win is exactly what Alabama's good in defensively. Is stopping the run. And Alabama's got one of the best fronts of the entire country. Now, can Auburn play left-handed? Can Auburn now have a throwing facet to their football team and to their game in general enough to keep Alabama at least where they're not, just playing sell out to the run, stacking 7-8 guys in the box, and then being like, okay, Auburn, you got to beat this with pass. So I'm sure that's what they're working on this week. Right now, I'm sure Robbie Ashford has a set handful of plays that he's working on to obviously throw the football, because we know Alabama, their game plan will be, hey, we will stop the run. We will make this team have to throw the ball against us in order to compete. And so. Auburn will be definitely challenged in the thing that they do best, which is running the ball.
We were talking about the run game a minute ago. How would you assess the play calling of Cadillac and Will Friend over the last few weeks? Is it a kind of a good medium of what they're doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to lean into your strengths. Most teams obviously want to be balanced, but if you just don't throw the football very well and consistently, it's just hard to. So sometimes in lieu of balance, teams will just start forcing it and start forcing their quarterback to throw the football. That way they have, quote unquote, air quotes, balance to their offense. Auburn's not doing that. They're like, hey, we know that we're good at running the football. We'll throw it on third and long when we have to. We'll throw it on second and long when we have to. But we're not going to put our quarterback in these tough situations. And I think it's good on them. We knew going into the year that, Robbie Ashford was a good runner, but he wasn't the best thrower of the football. I think if Zach Calzada was in this situation, we'd see a little bit more balance. I think he's got a better arm than Robbie Ashford. TJ Finley probably the same way, but they're playing to their strengths. That's the reason why I will say, hey, yes, kudos. This offensive coordinator, head coach, this unit so far, it's just playing to the strengths of what Auburn does well.
Yeah. So Auburn and Alabama again Saturday at 2:30 in the Iron Bowl. We'll continue to preview that as we move through the week. But that they're going to be energized for this game as they have been under Cadillac. And I've seen several people, including a prominent SEC network person who I will not name because he's on the radio at this time every day as well, says that Cadillac should really be considered for the head coaching job.
Yeah, there's a lot of that talk going out there, and I do think some of it is prisoner of the moment. I do think some of it is Auburn is playing well right now, and they're responding. And people aren't wrong on that. People are not wrong on the fact that the team is responding to Carnell Williams. And I love Cadillac, and I think he's done a great job so far. But it's a very limited sample size, 3 games, 2 on the road, 1 on a very short week. He didn't even know. He is very, very deserving of being on the staff and being one of the main faces for Auburn moving forward. I'm not willing to make that leap that he deserves the head coaching job right now. Now, will he be a head coach at some point? For sure, probably fantastic. But I just don't see it as we stand today. Even though there's a lot of talk out there, but I do think Auburn is squarely looking in another direction for their head coach.
Yeah, the direction being west towards Oxford, Mississippi.
Yep.
But hey, Iron Bowl coming up this week should be fun, no matter what. In football we don't end in ties, but they do in soccer. The World Cup has begun, which is we're not used to having this time of the year.
Yeah.
But it is, and the U.S. team and Wales ended in a 1-1 tie.
Yeah, this is a really big game for the United States because we knew going into it, hey, you have 3 games in the group phase. The top 2 teams of the 4 in the group make the next round, the knockout round. We knew the England game was going to be very tough. The game against Iran, probably you'll be able to win that game relatively easily. This was the marquee game because it was the first one, and at the same time, too, because you're probably going to be the underdog against England. This was the game you needed to win or draw, and they obviously had a draw there. And I'm not going to act like some soccer aficionado. I'm not. I watch this sport, Olympics and World Cup. So, but we have a talented team. We have a very quick, very fast, very young team. I think we're the second youngest team in the entire field. So a lot of these guys haven't been on this stage before, but yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, they're playing in a foreign land over in Qatar. I think this team is, galvanized. They're playing really well, but unfortunate a penalty, in the late stages of the game, set up a penalty kick for Wales. They were able to get the even goal. And yeah, so you have a draw the very first game. So now it probably puts a little bit more pressure on you in the England game coming up, but I got to take care of business against Iran first.
So how do you come out of group play with a draw? Like, how will they figure that out?
Yeah, and the reason why I put it out there that I'm not a soccer aficionado is because I always have to relearn everything, relearn how the scoring system works in the World Cup as compared to regular leagues. I believe that I'll look at the standings, but I believe what ends up happening is because you have a draw, you now are 2-2 as far as because you have 4 things at play. Sorry, 5 things at play. You have games played, you got win, loss, or draw, and then you have the goal differential. So now because you ended a tie, now the goal differential is obviously 0. So it now put some pressure on you to, hey, can you go out and maybe get some style points against Iran in that match? That way your goal differential is separate from what Wales will be. So there'll be some scoreboard watching to see what Wales does against Iran and then to see what Wales does against England. But moving forward, I believe that will be the case. So as they stand right now, they're both 0-1 with the game being 1-1 tie. So they're at the exact same spot right now think the Iran game will be really huge. And then if they can pull the upset against England, they're in for sure.
Well, we'll be watching the World Cup, passing along all of our soccer knowledge to you involving Team USA as we move through here. That is all the time we have for you today. Appreciate you listening to us for the last hour. We'll be with you for a full 2 hours, hopefully, tomorrow. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday.
Fox Sports 102.9 is Alabama's